Have you ever felt the inescapable pang that your life, as you know it, is an incomplete formula, an equation missing the sole variable? Have you ever awakened in the midnight fog with the cryptic certainty that you are so much more than the sum of your bones and your worldly ambitions? For the evolved spirit, earthly existence transforms from a refuge into a prison unless the inner codes that dictate true expansion are deciphered. The universe whispers to us, sending synchronicities like breadcrumbs across the vast desert of unconsciousness, but few pause to listen to the immanent music of creation. We have grown accustomed to measuring success by the volume of our tangible assets, forgetting that the only wealth that accompanies us beyond the threshold is the harvest of wisdom accumulated through countless cycles of incarnation. We are forgotten navigators of a personal star chart, adrift in a sea of trivialities until a greater force, an existential crisis, or a whispered revelation compels us to remember our true cosmic nature. Spiritual transformation is not a process decided upon for convenience. It is an inexorable law that impels the spirit to dissolve the veil of illusion, to shatter the shell of the ego forged in fear and material identification. The soul does not seek comfort, it seeks resolution, it seeks wholeness. It seeks the conscious return to its primordial source of love and unity. Throughout the annals of psychic history, few beacons shone with the intensity and purity of Edgar Cayce, the legendary sleeping prophet. For decades, while his body rested in a self-induced trance, his consciousness ascended to the Akashic records, the vast cosmic library where every thought, every action, and every life lived is archived. Cayce did not merely diagnose physical ailments, he unraveled the architecture of spiritual evolution, providing fundamental keys to identifying a being's vibrational stage. His readings revealed that the soul's progress does not adhere to a rigid ladder of ascent. Rather, it manifests as a vortex, a spiral where learnings and insights overlap, allowing multiple signs of spiritual maturity to coexist simultaneously in an individual's experience. Tonight, the gloom of ignorance recedes. We will access Cayce's cryptic legacy to discern the 12 arcane signs, the 12 unmistakable reflections that demonstrate your spirit has crossed a significant threshold, no longer participating in the game of forgetting, but acting as a conscious agent of light on Earth. We will discuss the non-linear nature of growth, how the feeling of existential strangeness becomes the first and glorious indication that awakening has begun. We will explore the purifying fire of existential questioning, that fundamental doubt that breaks the prison of social obedience to ask, "Why am I here?" We will delve into the intricate web of energy sensitivity, learning to identify how evolution refines your senses, transforming them into tuning forks capable of perceiving the density or lightness of the energy emanating from people and environments. We will unveil the process of material detachment and the dissolution of the ego, that crucial stage where the golden chains of possession lose their luster before the light of inner truth. We will discover how synchronicities cease to be mere coincidences and become the direct language of the universe, confirming that every step, however uncertain it may seem, is orchestrated by a higher intelligence. We will analyze the dreamlike realms of vivid and premonitory dreams, where the soul, free from the constraints of the physical body, receives instructions and prophetic glimpses of the unfolding future. We will understand the alchemy of karma, not as punishment, but as the curriculum chosen by the soul to master certain lessons, transforming suffering into wisdom. We will reveal how compassion expands from selective affection to become selfless and unconditional service to all of creation. And finally, we will glimpse the hallmarks of mastery, conscious connection with spiritual guides, unwavering inner peace that withstands external storms, mastery of manifestation through pure thought, and the embodiment of unconditional love as a constant state of being. This is not an intellectual exercise. It is a profound communion with the core of your destiny. The wisdom unfolded here demands a vibrational response, an energetic anchoring. Before we turn the scroll and reveal the first sign, it is essential that our pact of seeking be sealed. If the resonance of these ancient truths has ignited a flame within you, if you feel the call to awaken, you must manifest this commitment in 3 essential ways. Grant the vital pulse of your recognition, like this revelation, sending a wave of positive energy into the digital ether so that other seekers may also find this beacon. Subscribe to this sanctuary of knowledge, joining the brotherhood of those who reject superficiality and demand profound truth. And above all, decree the most important intention, the mantra that will open your portals of perception, repeating it in the silence of your spirit until it becomes flesh. I seek the truth. The journey has begun. May the light of the sleeping prophet guide our passage through the 12 arcana that define the evolved soul. The presumption that spiritual evolution follows a straight, ascending line is the most persistent and damaging of the illusions imposed by the Cartesian mindset, a dogma of simplicity that isolates the intrinsic complexity of the soul. This conception, sadly fostered by certain esoteric creeds and superficial self-help manuals, obscures the truth revealed in the Hermetic codices and the Nag Hammadi scrolls. The growth of the self is not like a rigid ladder where, once a rung is climbed, it is never trodden again, but rather operates according to the sacred geometry of the vortex, the cosmic spiral. In this toroidal design, movement is perpetually cyclical, but each rotation occurs on a higher vibrational plane, implying that the seeker will revisit the same themes: the fear of abandonment, the need for control, the dissolution of the ego, but will do so from a radically new octave of consciousness. Equipped with tools of discernment previously inaccessible, non-linearity is, therefore, a function of the multidimensionality of the spirit. The being does not progress like a uniform monolith, but like a complex stellar system where different parts of the being, the energy centers, the subtle bodies, the Akashic records, mature and heal at disparate and seemingly unconnected speeds. Ignoring this spiral nature inevitably leads to frustration and self-judgment when the soul, in its need for integration, requires what appears to be a painful regression. The metaphysical physics of this spiraling movement dictates that mastery is not the absence of challenge, but rather the ability to face the previous challenge with greater serenity and a radically expanded perspective. The hidden texts of the Gnostic tradition, those jealously guarded to prevent dogmatic simplification, insist that human experience is inherently fractal. Just as the entire universe is contained within the atom, the totality of evolutionary challenges resides in each individual lesson. This explains the initiate's paradox. The manifestation of vast, unconditional love, a sign of a healed and activated heart chakra, can coexist with the persistence of intense emotional reactivity to personal criticism, a sign of a solar plexus chakra still cleansing itself of remnants of power and self-worth. The simultaneous growth of the 12 signs of evolution, which we will examine in depth, resembles an orchestra where the symphony progresses, but the cello takes longer to find its perfect note than the oboe. It is the acceptance of this internal asynchrony, this differentiated maturation time for each stratum of being, that allows fluidity in the process, freeing the seeker from the tyranny of the spiritual should, that false metric that measures progress based on cultural expectations and not on the vibratory truth of the individual soul. The coexistence of multiple signs of evolution, even those that seem mutually exclusive, is irrefutable evidence of the holistic nature of awakening. A seeker may exhibit profound intuitive wisdom, the ability to channel complex information from the unified field, a sign of mastery in the higher centers, Ajna and Sahasrara, while simultaneously battling subtle addictions or deeply rooted patterns of self-sabotage in the lower etheric body, the Muladhara and Svadhisthana centers. This dissociation is not a flaw, but a map. It points to the areas of being where the light of knowledge has arrived first, revealing, by contrast, the areas of densification that require the more intense intervention of the higher self. The ancient masters of the cosmic egg path, a less widely known reference than the Merkaba, understood that the energy of enlightenment, as it descends, first purifies the centers most accessible to awakened consciousness, and then radiates down to the base, forcing a final confrontation with the primal structures of fear and survival. Evolution is, in essence, this continuous process of bringing the light of knowledge into the remaining shadow, and the spiral ensures that no darkness can be permanently avoided, only temporarily postponed. The cyclical revisiting of lessons, often mistaken for regression, is in fact the most powerful integrative mechanism the psyche possesses. When the soul ascends one turn on the spiral, it carries with it the tool of new perspective, and when it momentarily descends to the same previous thematic point, for example, a betrayal or a loss, it does so not to relive the trauma, but to rewrite the biochemical and vibrational response to that stimulus. This conscious recapitulation, as it is called in certain forbidden Tibetan manuscripts, is fundamental to dismantling the karmic structures embedded not only in the mind, but also in cellular memory and spiritual DNA. Linear evolution only allows for forgetting the past lesson. Spiral evolution demands transmutation. Therefore, the mentor must insist that the seeker abandon the whip of sequential perfectionism. If today you feel the unshakable peace of unified consciousness, and tomorrow you find yourself caught in an explosion of primal anger, you haven't failed. You are simply integrating unconditional love at a depth that the ego, in its attempt to hold on, desperately needs to challenge. It is the downward spiral that anchors truth in the material world, forging the gold of mastery through the crucible of recurring experience. Recognizing this toroidal nature of evolution radically changes the initiate's relationship with their own path. It is no longer about frantically climbing toward an unattainable peak of perfection, but about constantly expanding outward and inward, embracing the totality of being in every moment, without discarding any phase of experience as inferior or surpassed. Spiritual growth is, therefore, an act of radical acceptance of the dynamic present, where compassion for the imperfect self becomes the most potent alchemical lever. If the forbidden texts teach us anything, it is that true mastery lies in the ability to sustain paradox, to be simultaneously wise and vulnerable, enlightened and still in the process of healing. This understanding dissolves the illusion of the final goal and anchors the being in the infinite process of becoming. Non-linearity is the signature of the infinite manifesting in the finite. Now, if evolution is not a simple ladder, what is the first and most irrefutable sign that we have begun to spin on a higher octave of the spiral, freeing ourselves from the prison of worldly causality? We will discover this by examining the deepest alteration in your receiving mechanism, the activation of the telepathic channel with the invisible hierarchy. But the connection with the unseen is not a chance gift. It is a direct vibrational response to the first great purging of consciousness, the transfiguration of your inner dialogue. How did the sleeping prophet reveal the need to silence the noise in order to hear the symphony of the guides? And what is the true cost of not doing so? Existential questioning is not merely a symptom of psychological maladjustment, as the mundane matrix would attempt to categorize it, but rather the first and most violent sign that the soul has broken the pact of forgetting and initiated an ontological rebellion. It is the manifestation of a radical dissonance between the inner truth of being and the consensual lie that society has constructed as a refuge. When consciousness exhausted by the futility of chasing shadows, stops and utters the primal cry, "Why am I here?" That question acts as an energetic detonator that dismantles the constructs of identity based on social role, material accumulation, or external approval. It is at this breaking point that the individual ceases to be a mere product of their causal environment and becomes an active investigator of their own essence. A phase described in the forbidden codices of Thoth as the opening of the third inner eye, where personal crisis, divorce, job loss, sudden illness is not a misfortune, but rather the precise and brutally efficient tool used by the higher self to force the immolation of the comfortable ego. This process compels consciousness to confront the abyssal void that underlies all programmed existence, revealing that the sought-after purpose is not an external goal to be achieved, but an internal frequency to tune into, demonstrating that the need for meaning is as fundamental and biological as the need to breathe, and its denial produces an unbearable spiritual suffocation. The genesis of this profound quest lies in the collapse of the previously accepted infrastructure of meaning. The personal crisis, far from being a random event, is the necessary surgical intervention that fractures the shell of illusion. The dark night of the soul, as it has been named in various esoteric traditions, compels the adept to inhabit an ontological void where transient pleasures and worldly achievements are revealed as mirages without substance. In this crucible of purifying despair, the question, "What is the meaning of all this?" emerges, not as philosophical speculation, but as a burning in the center of the chest, a vital demand of the monad that can no longer endure the pretense. The Book of the Shadow of Ahriman warns that the forces of stagnation use the fear of emptiness to incite the being to quickly rebuild the old cages. Therefore, the true rite of passage is the ability to hold the question without seeking an immediate answer, allowing ambiguity to become the womb of transformation. Recognizing that life, as it has been lived until now, lacks essential foundation, requires a courage that transcends physical strength, for it implies renouncing the security of ignorance in favor of the terror of revealed truth, knowing that the known identity must die so that the true being can even begin to breathe. The anatomy of this questioning is complex, for the question, "Why am I here?" operates on multiple planes simultaneously. It is not a search for a job or social affiliation. It is the demand for a cosmological decoding of individual existence. The question is an activation code that, when formulated with absolute honesty and desperation, resonates through the subtle planes, informing the universe that the fragment of consciousness is ready to assume its sovereignty. This inner impulse is frequently misinterpreted by the linear mind, which attempts to encapsulate the vastness of purpose within limited and rational concepts. However, the true depth of the sign lies in its somatic quality. Anxiety, insomnia, or inexplicable restlessness are, in fact, the etheric body responding to the call, vibrating at a frequency higher than that to which the central nervous system is accustomed. According to the Hermetic principles of the Black Kybalion, the energy released by this genuine questioning is the same energy used to alter causality, demonstrating that the individual has finally begun to reverse their focus from reaction to creation, using the pain of not knowing as the most potent catalyst for metamorphosis, forcing the mind to look beyond sensory perception and seek the golden thread that connects their existence to the greater universal design, which has remained hidden behind the veil of everyday life. Resistance to this first sign of awakening is the fiercest battle the individual must wage, for the ego, the guardian of the illusion of separation, will employ every possible tactic to stifle existential inquiry. This resistance manifests as the compulsive urge to fill the void with distractions, be they addictions, hyperactivity, or excessive intellectualization of the problem. The danger lies in turning the spiritual imperative into an academic pursuit, where the head is filled with lofty concepts, but the heart remains closed and life untransformed. The revealing mentor's stance here emphasizes the need to purge the need for definitive answers from external sources. No one, neither guru nor sacred text, can deliver the map of your purpose, for the map is your own unfolding consciousness. The ancient masters of the path of fire insisted that the question, when kept alive and vibrant, becomes the engine of ascension. Surrender to uncertainty is the precise point where grace can intervene. If the seeker dares to dwell in the discomfort of essential ignorance, free from the need for certainty, he will have freed himself from the control of the Archon, who thrives in the rigidity of preconceived structures, and will have taken the first irreversible step towards conscious self-determination. Existential questioning, therefore, is the initiatory threshold, the baptism of fire that separates the sleeper from the seeker. It marks the transition from being a passive object swept along by the current of karmic destiny to becoming an active subject who shapes their reality through pure intention. Once the mind has formulated the essential question and the heart has felt the terror of the absence of predetermined meaning, the path back to the innocence of forgetting is forever closed. This sign reveals not only a crisis, but also a promise that the being is prepared to receive information from higher levels. The intense pressure and discomfort that accompany this awakening are simply the calibration of the nervous system to handle higher frequencies of truth. It is consciousness asserting its divine right to inner coherence with the cosmos. This act of individual rebellion against the programming of superficiality is what compels reality itself to restructure itself around the seeker's new center of gravity. If the soul has cried out its first great question, the universe cannot remain silent. How does the cosmic answer manifest? And why is the law of synchronicity not a chance coincidence, but the inescapable geometry that demonstrates that consciousness is no longer an isolated point, but the center of the field of manifestation? If the awakening of existential questioning was the baptism of the spirit into doubt, the emergence of energetic sensitivity is the recalibration of the physical body as a conscious antenna, the second inescapable sign that the veil of illusion has been irrevocably torn. This phenomenon is not merely a psychic suggestion, but a fundamental alteration in the individual's vibratory threshold, where the sensorium is no longer limited to perceiving the known electromagnetic spectrum, but expands to the direct apprehension of the subtle emanations inherent in all forms of life and inorganic matter. The seeker, freed from the heavy cloak of programmed forgetting, begins to register the etheric imprint, the non-verbal and invisible information that saturates every space and every interaction. Suddenly, a room that previously seemed neutral now feels thick or is contaminated. The presence of certain people generates a resonance of peace or, conversely, provokes a sudden and inexplicable physical exhaustion that Cartesian medicine cannot diagnose. This eruption of subtle perception forces the neophyte to recognize a multidimensional reality that texts like the Book of Jan, banned by dogmatic authorities, described as the plane where the fibers of time intertwine with the substance of desire. It is a painful paradigm shift, for it implies that the protective blindness has disappeared, and now one must navigate an ocean of frequencies without a pre-existing map. The distinction between heavy and light energies is not a moral metaphor, but a direct reading of the informational density and entropy of a vibrational field. Energies perceived as heavy or dense are those charged with patterns of low coherence, accumulated fear, unreleased resentment, persistent lies, and fundamentally stasis or stagnation of intention. These low frequencies generate a dragging effect on the bioelectric field of the sensitive individual, causing genuine physical symptoms, nausea, throbbing headaches, or fatigue that is not relieved by sleep. On the other hand, And light or high vibrations reflect syntropy, harmonic coherence, clear intention, unconditional love, and liberated truth. These act as a resonant tonic, elevating the perceiver's internal state. In ancient Hermetic alchemical manuals, this process was called the discrimination of the solve and the coagula at the etheric level. The challenge lies in the fact that the nervous system, accustomed to filtering the vast majority of reality to maintain homeostasis, is now overwhelmed. The chakras, those bioenergetic transducers that act as exchange ports between the physical body and the subtle bodies, are forced into accelerated opening, demanding a discipline of centering and shielding that the awakening individual rarely possesses innately. This heightened sensitivity quickly becomes a radical criterion for social and environmental navigation, redefining the experience of habitable space. The sensitive individual begins to experience a profound aversion to crowds, not out of misanthropy, but due to an inability to process the collective psychic cacophony. Modern architectural spaces designed without regard for sacred geometry, or places historically charged with trauma, such as hospitals, courthouses, or even high-stress corporate offices, become high vibrational risk zones that must be avoided under penalty of immediate energetic collapse. This phenomenon underscores the hidden truth that the physical environment is not neutral. Every object and every structure retains an imprint of the emotions and thoughts that surrounded it. The sensitive person involuntarily becomes a reader of this telluric and human imprint, a seismograph of environmental morality. The difficulty of maintaining superficial relationships intensifies as body language and words become secondary to the vibrational truth emanating from the other. The lie is felt as a palpable physical distortion, making social hypocrisy unsustainable and forcing a radical purification of the inner circle in a process that the major arcana call the essential separatio. The most significant danger for the newly sensitive person is not external energy itself, but reactive interpretation and fear. Many fall into the trap of seeing themselves as perpetual victims of external contamination, developing pathological hypersensitivity or symptoms of chronic exhaustion. The mentor's stance is crucial here. This capacity is not a curse, but a tool of sovereignty. The task is to transform reactivity into active discernment. The sensitive person must learn to distinguish between projection, internal fear amplifying an external reading, and reception, accurate reading of the external field. This requires rigorous mastery of one's own energy field, the constant practice of heart coherence, and the implementation of hermetic sealing techniques, the ancient rites of psychic protection denied by materialism. Only through this alchemical discipline, where one's center remains undisturbed and strong, is sensitivity transmuted from vulnerability into a shield. This is the first practical step towards mastery, where the seeker ceases to be a sponge and becomes a mirror, reflecting density without absorbing it. Ultimately, the activation of energy sensitivity is confirmation that consciousness has expanded sufficiently to validate the existence of non-physical dimensions. It is the first firm foothold on the path of practical gnosis. The individual who masters this perception not only avoids toxic environments, but also begins to use this information as an internal GPS for decision-making, anticipating relational dynamics or future events based on the present vibrational quality. This ability is the bridge to understanding the laws of resonance. If I can sense the frequency of the environment, I can modulate my own frequency to selectively attract or repel. The universe begins to respond not only to what you think, but to the stable frequency you hold. This is the beginning of conscious manifestation, the foundation upon which the temple of personal reality is built. But if we are already capable of sensing the vibrational truth of the immediate, how does this inner resonance translate into the external fabric of time? How does the universe, Upon recognizing the seeker's new frequency, rearrange events and people into meaningful patterns that defy the logic of chance, demonstrating that coincidence does not exist and that synchronicity is the sacred geometry of a universe that responds to intention. The illusion of material detachment lies not in the physical renunciation of possessions, but in the annihilation of the psychic need for them as validation of being. This is the third and crucial sign of initiatory maturation, the understanding that accumulation, far from being a testament to success or security, is a heavy chain forged in the furnace of illusory scarcity that the ego fears to confront. Contemporary society, following the unwritten dictates of the archons of consumption, has codified human worth in the volume and brilliance of one's possessions, creating a system where identity merges with inventory. The seeker who still defines themselves by the type of vehicle they drive or the extent of their wealth remains trapped in the dimension of having, denying themselves access to the dimension of being. It is necessary to examine the apocryphal texts and the warnings of the ancients, who defined dense matter not as evil in itself, but as a powerful field of distraction. A constant hum prevents us from hearing the subtle frequency of spirit. Matter offers only a fullness of entropic nature, destined for decay and corrosion, forcing the ego to perpetuate a frenetic cycle of replacement and acquisition, chasing the shadow of a satisfaction that, by cosmic design, can never be permanent on the physical plane. This material attachment becomes a psychosomatic armor, rigid and vulnerable to loss, stifling the essential mobility required for dimensional transition. A deep understanding of detachment must address the mechanics of dissatisfaction. When individuals seek wholeness through external objects, they are using dense substitutes to fill a void that is purely vibrational and spiritual in nature. Each new acquisition, be it a work of art, a piece of property, or a new technology, offers a brief dopamine rush, which is immediately neutralized by the law of habituation. The soul, yearning for the unchanging connection with Source, receives only a temporary placebo that quickly loses its potency. This vicious cycle is fueled by the ego's pathological identification with its history and its extensions. The I am what I have. Studying the Hermetic treatises on prima materia and its polarity with universal spirit reveals that the fascination with the perishable is, in essence, a mechanism of self-denial. Detachment, therefore, does not mean forced impoverishment, but rather the release of the emotional burden and investment of vital energy in maintaining what is destined to fade away. The true adept treats their possessions as temporary tools, as travel supplies, never as anchors to their destiny or repositories of their happiness. The proof of this sign is the ability to lose everything without the internal structure of their consciousness fracturing. The dismantling of the ego is inseparable from material detachment, for the ego is the great classifier and protector of the boundaries of illusory identity. The ego, that eidolon created by the mind to interact with three-dimensional density, desperately needs external validation and builds its ivory tower with the bricks of perceived success, social status, and, fundamentally, ownership. The process of disidentification requires surgical introspection, observing where the possessive pronoun my has merged with the concept of who am I. It is necessary to apply methodical doubt to every aspect of self-definition. Am I my professional title? Am I my house? Am I my physical body? If the answer is yes, consciousness is in captivity. The work of gnosis is to reduce the ego to its utilitarian function, a neutral navigator, stripping it of its role as an emotional tyrant. The key is not to hate the ego or matter, but to understand that they are vehicles, not the driver. Progressive disidentification generates an ontological lightness, allowing the true essence, the immutable observer, to emerge from the layers of superficial identification, preparing to receive knowledge that can only nest in an empty inner space free from worldly demand. The practice of detachment is an exercise in inner alchemy that transforms the fear of loss into the radical acceptance of transience. The initiate is not required to abandon their home and retreat to the desert, for external asceticism without inner transformation is mere posturing. Rather, they are asked to observe their reactions to the threat of lack. What happens in the psyche when a valued object is broken, lost, or stolen? The magnitude of the emotional disturbance is the precise measure of the prison of attachment. True detachment is cultivated daily, offering possessions to the flow of time without resistance, releasing the mental energy invested in securing, maintaining, and worrying about material things. This energetic release is critical, since maintaining strong attachments drains the psychic resources necessary to sustain elevated states of consciousness. The adept must practice silent generosity, giving without expecting recognition or reciprocity, and must see their own talents and knowledge not as personal property that confers superiority, but as tools borrowed for cosmic service. This awareness of stewardship, rather than ownership, disarms the ego center and allows abundance to flow without the need to be compulsively held onto, as the flow is recognized as true security. The result of successful disidentification is the unconditional sovereignty of the spirit. When the seeker no longer depends on the external configuration of their life to maintain their inner equilibrium, they become impervious to the manipulations of the three-dimensional world. They have understood that lasting fulfillment is not found in the accumulation of what is alien to themselves, but in the unbreakable connection to the source of their own being. This existential lightness allows them to move fluidly through life's challenges, without the paralyzing fear of ruin or social judgment. Material and egoic detachment is not an end in itself, but the purification of the vessel, the necessary release of ballast so that the vessel of being can rise to the higher spheres of perception. Without this radical cleansing of identification with form and matter, any higher knowledge would immediately become corrupted, being used by the ego to inflate its sense of spiritual importance, thus creating a vanity trap, more dangerous than the initial material attachment. Only the individual who has recognized that he possesses nothing but is contained in the all is ready to receive the true revelation of purpose. Soft background music, more intimate tone. Now, before continuing the journey toward resonance with the higher purpose, close your eyes for a moment and ask yourself, how much psychic weight have you assigned to that which time will inevitably take away? Allow the image of your most attached object to fade into the ether and observe your body's visceral reaction. It is in this phantom pain that the last bond to illusion resides. If detachment frees us from the burden of the past and the need for the future, allowing us to float in the stillness of the present, in what exact way does this neutrality of being attune us to the deep currents of destiny, revealing the map of our essential mission, the one that is activated when we stop searching and simply allow ourselves to be found? We have crossed the threshold. The map has been revealed. Purpose is not an external goal conquered by force, but an internal frequency sustained by stillness. By emptying the attached self and purifying the vessel of being, we become the neutral channel, the living archetype through which the higher will expresses itself without distortion. The essential mission emerges when the seeker surrenders to the truth of the self found. This is the powerful insight. Ultimate expansion is achieved only through ultimate surrender. Destiny flows through the self that has chosen not to interfere. If your essential purpose is already active within you, waiting for you to simply stop interfering, tell me in the comments, What specific action will you take today to silence the voice of the ego that insists on controlling and manipulating the outcome? Awakening is a collective and conscious act. If this synthesis of truth has resonated deep within you, illuminate the path for others by sharing this compendium of wisdom. And if you are ready to ensure communion with the revelations to come, subscribe and activate the sacred destiny of notifications. It is not a mere click. It is the decree of your own evolutionary continuity. Our journey doesn't end here. It transforms into action. On the screen to the side, you'll see the portal to the next stage, the sacred geometry of manifestation. Cross the threshold. Refine your alchemy. It's time to be